Good evening, everyone. My name is Liza Gentile, and I'm the Assistant Director of Alumni Relations here at Johnson & Wales University and a proud alum. Thank you for joining us for Cook Along with JWU using local and seasonal ingredients. We're excited to bring you this program to kick off the holiday season. Before we get started, I'd like to review a few housekeeping items. Please feel free to turn your cameras on, but keep your mics muted. Since we're a small group this evening, please feel free to turn on your mic and ask a question at any time. If you'd prefer, you can type your question into the chat and I will read it aloud. The chat feature can be used to message other attendees and is located at the bottom of your screen. I'd now like to introduce tonight's presenter. Michael Makuch, class of 2003 and class of 2005, chairs the Culinary and Interdisciplinary Food Studies departments of the College of Food Innovation and Technology, providing students with the opportunity to explore a variety of dynamic career opportunities through an innovative curriculum. With an extensive foundation in building community culinary nutrition programs, Mccouch concentrates on utilizing fresh, locally sourced ingredients to create a unique dining experience. He believes that food is a vehicle to a journey whose story can be told on a plate. As an educator, he helps students to construct their own food philosophy. Through community outreach, he has designed nutrition programs for youngsters and senior citizens to expand their use of healthy ingredients within their reach. As an advocate for the medicinal benefits of food, he teaches the Food and Health Program, a collaboration between JWU and the Warren Alpert School of Medicine of Brown University, in which medical students learn to integrate healthy eating into their future medical practice. Please join me in welcoming Chef Makuch. Chef, I'll turn it over to you to get us started with the demo.
Thank you, Liza. So welcome everybody. And again, if you do have any questions as we go through the presentation, just feel free to speak up, or the chat function's a little far for me, and I have a little hard time seeing it. But if you want to just shout out what your question might be as we go, that would be great. So I'm going to go over all the ingredients. I tried to keep the recipe fairly simple. I didn't know how much culinary background you might have or how comfortable you are in the kitchen, and I really wanted to allow you to, wherever you are, to use the fresh local ingredients that you can find. So I'll go over what I have, and then if you have any questions about some of the ingredients that you have or what order to put them in as we start cooking, you're more than welcome to ask. So one of the key ingredients that I'm going to be using in this skillet is called the Maccumber Turnip, and it's local to this area. And I actually have a picture that I sent Liza, and I don't know if you can put that up, but the Maccumber Turnip actually has its own historic marker right here in town. So, and it's got a little story about the discovery of this turnip, and it's just one example of one of the heirloom vegetables that is really native to this region, and unfortunately its story isn't always told, and it can be lost to history if culinarians and chefs and the average at-home cook doesn't learn how to work with it. And it would be a shame to lose something like this, because it is truly symbolic of the region, and it really has an excellent flavor and a number of different uses, which I'm going to try to show you today. It is sometimes referred to as the Westport turnip, where it's cultivated in Westport, Massachusetts, and that happens to be where I live as well. So that's my home. And then sometimes known as the Cape Cod turnip as well. So it goes by a variety of names. It's really a cross between the traditional purple top and a rutabaga. So it brings in a really nice buttery, sweet flavor into the dish, and it can be incorporated into a skillet like we're going to be making today, or you can turn it into a soup, really nice cream-based soup. You can add it to mashed potatoes or puree it into to carrot. So carrot and turnip becomes pretty popular around the holiday season. Its growing season and harvest is going to be pretty much available right now in some of your local markets, and all the way till about Easter is when you can find it. And it comes in a much larger varieties than the smaller one, but I actually prefer the smaller ones over the larger turnips. I find them to be a little bit more tender and a little bit sweeter. So everybody goes for the big ones, but I usually try to shop around for the smallest ones possible. So there's a variety of uses for this. I do have some butternut squash as well. So, and everything's going to be diced. I'll show you some of the general knife cuts and how to achieve them. And don't get like, don't allow the knife cuts to really, deter you from, making this dish. I mean, really the key is nobody's going to be measuring your knife cuts to make sure your brunoise is a brunoise or whatever it might be. The key is really just keeping it uniform for cooking. Is it available across the country? We had a question come in. So I think that was from Eric. Eric, so you can get this across the country, but you'll have to mail order it. So it does ship. It may not be found grown in other areas across the country, but you can get it shipped into you. And some restaurants are actually starting to do that as it's starting to show up on menus actually on the West Coast, believe it or not. So we're slowly putting this Maccumber turnip on the map, and the colleagues that work with me kind of know that I'm like the turnip king. So I get teased a lot about this vegetable, but I'm really passionate about it. And it really is just about using local products if you have it. So I hope that answers your question, Eric. So you can get it, but you may have to get it shipped in if it's not grown in your particular area. So some carrots is another ingredient that we have. Red bell pepper, if you missed it. I have a mixture of potatoes. So some new potatoes and some sweet potatoes that I diced up. Some fresh local shiitake mushrooms from the Rhode Island mushroom farm. And then we have an onion and some garlic. And I'm going to show you how to work with these. Herbs and spices, I kept the recipe pretty simple to really kind of allow you to, play around with whatever types of spices or herbs that you might like or have on hand. So I'm just using some chopped parsley that I'll put in at the very, very end, and some thyme, which we'll take off of the stem. So the thyme is still available actually in my garden. The parsley I got right from the local supermarket. So we had a little bit of a hard frost. So all of my parsley wilted away. And then for my finished plate, you can really, there's a whole bunch of options for this. This is really designed to be a side dish. So it can be served just as a hash. It can be served as a side during your holiday meal. And it can also be incorporated into a stuffing. There's a number of different options for you. I kept it vegetarian with the option of adding some meat in there. So if you wanted to add in some braised meats or any leftover product that you might have. I have short ribs cooking in the oven, so I'm gonna incorporate some short ribs into this particular dish, and I'm also going to use up some of the scrap Maccumber turnip that I have to make a nice puree for the plate, and work on some garnishes. So we'll get through that. Any questions before we begin? All right. So we're going to get started here, and I'm just going to just demo a couple of knife cuts, and then we're going to get right into cooking. So one of the first things I wanted to show you was onion. A lot of people kind of shy away from cutting onions. So, and it's really super, super easy. The key is make sure you have a nice sharp knife. Some people will put their onion in the fridge. If it's cold, it's definitely going to help. So as it starts to warm up, you're going to start to get a little bit more of those juices that come off and can then make you cry. We'll keep a little bit of the root end on, trim this up. And then I'm not going to bother trying to peel it. I'm just going to cut it right in half. Okay, this is actually a very large onion, and I probably only will need about half of it. And then once I cut it in half, it makes it a lot easier to get this peel off. And I take the first layer because it tends to be a little bit waxy. and tough. So as the onion grows, as you get into the inner portions of the onion, is where you get a little bit more tender. You can kind of see how the papery and kind of waxiness of that. So I definitely take off that first layer. Place this in here. And then to cut the onions, really simple. So I'm going to use the natural lines of the onion and just kind of follow it straight down. Don't cut all the way to the root because you're going to lose it. And depending on what size you want your knife cuts for your onion will determine how close you make these cuts. So if you want it smaller, you can make it a little bit closer. If you want it, 1/4 inch or a little bit larger, you can make it a little larger. Totally up to you. And if you really want to make it small, you can go in the other way as well, and that'll help to round it off. Again, I'm not super concerned, so I'm just going to use it as is. And once I cut the other way, I'm going to get a really nice, easy diced onion all squared away for me. No tears yet. So it's that simple. And that is actually going to be more than enough onion that I'm going to end up needing for this particular recipe, but we'll save the rest for later on. And then the only other ingredients that I'm going to be working with that need to be processed down, everything else is prepped up, is some garlic, which I'll turn into a garlic paste. Up to you. I use garlic in just about everything that I cook, because I like the flavor. And I'm going to be using 2 cloves in this particular recipe that I added in, but it is totally up to you if you want to use some garlic or not. And I'll show you how to process this down fairly easily. So I already peeled the garlic, and I already worked on one. And I by peeling it, you just crush it down, and that's going to release the peel. We'll crush it back, and then I'm going to add a little bit of salt. And the salt does a couple of different things. So the salt's going to start drawing out the moisture of the garlic, and it's coarse. So it's going to help me kind of process this garlic. So I'm just going to take the edge of my knife and scrape back and forth on that garlic and the cutting board, just like so, and it's going to turn it into a paste. And it's really an easy way. Now, garlic and onion are both fairly interesting because the more you cut into it, the stronger that bite is going to get. So if you don't like that onion or garlic bite, you definitely don't have to process it. And how you cut it is greatly determined on how it's going to be consumed in the recipe. I don't want to bite into a big piece of garlic, but I want that flavor all the way through, which is why I'm turning it into a paste here for this particular recipe, using it more as a flavoring. So some people like to roast it whole. It takes on a totally different flavor. Once it's roasted whole, it gets really buttery. And you get this kind of really nice umami characteristic that goes with it too. So, and it can be used in a number of different applications as a whole roasted garlic clove. So, or you can slice it, and that's going to give you even different flavor. So totally up to you. There's my garlic, there's my onion, everything's ready to go. So I'm going to turn on my stove here, and we're going to start cooking. And the way you're going to want to process your skillet is going to be, you want to start with the hardest vegetables first. That's going to take the longest to actually cook. And that's extremely important because if we start with the softer vegetables, then we're going to potentially overcook those vegetables. The other thing you want to take care in is making sure that you maintain the color of your vegetables. So if you have any green vegetables, those I typically will add in towards the end to maintain their color, and they even benefit from being blanched. So there's a number of different options for you. So I'm starting by just melting a little bit of butter, and I'm going to add some oil. I know your recipe just calls for oil, but I'm going to add some meat into this anyway. So I'm not going to keep it vegan, but totally up to you. So I'm just using basically a fortified butter with a little bit of oil, and I'm melting that on into the cast iron skillet. I like using cast iron. It takes a little bit longer to heat, but once it gets hot, it maintains its temperature really, really well. So it's not going to, I'm going to get less fluctuation as I start to add in more and more ingredients that are cold. So I really, really like using cast iron for this particular application, skillets. Anytime I'm going to be searing any type of meats, I tend to use cast iron. And I happen to be using an induction cooktop because that's what I have here at my stove, but it works well on gas or electric. And obviously it is induction ready for cast iron as well. So there's some major benefits there. So I'm just going to wait. I don't want to brown the butter, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start with the garlic, and I got to pay attention to this. I really want to infuse that oil and butter, but I don't want to burn it. So there's a little bit of a danger by starting with the garlic, especially because it's so fine, that I have the potential to burn that garlic if I'm not careful. So just going to keep an eye on it here as we go through to make sure it doesn't actually burn on me. And I'm spreading it around. And really the key here is I want to get it aromatic. So, and once I get it aromatic, then I know that I'm really extracting all of that flavor out of that garlic, and it's being infused into the oil, and it's going to help flavor the dish as I start to cook some of those other elements in there. So I'm going to do the same thing with the onion once this starts to get a little bit translucent, so maybe a minute or two. And with this skillet, we're pretty much cooking via conduction, so the heat's conducting right to the skillet, and then from there, it's conducting to the oil, and then right to the garlic, and now to the onion. So, and again, the goal here is not to brown. I just want to keep it translucent and kind of start to build flavors all in the same pan. So a one pot meal, or side, if you will. Anybody ever make a skillet at home before? Corned beef hash, or they go by a variety of different names. So I'm going to give that a couple of minutes. Probably going to take about 2-3 minutes to get the onions translucent and soft, along with the garlic, and start to pull off some moisture. So initially, you see a lot of steam that comes off of your vegetables because they're primarily made up of mostly water. And for the vast majority, when we're cooking whatever product we might be working with, you're going to see they have generally a high moisture content. So, and we're kind of battling that moisture content as we go through. So we don't want to overcrowd this pan. If we overcrowd this pan, we're going to we're going to cool it down too much, and it's going to start boiling in there and simmering instead of a nice saute. So we always want to keep that sizzle. And again, the cast iron is going to help in keeping that and maintaining that heat. That's one of the strategies that we're using, but we're also not overcrowding, and we're adding these vegetables in slowly as we go to try to maintain that temperature. So we want to stay above that 212 degrees and really start to get a little bit of browning, maybe around 300 degrees is what we're looking at. And we got two kind of reactions going on here between the onion and the garlic. We got a little bit of caramelization that's occurring, and that's a result of the sugar reacting with the heat that's coming from that garlic and onion. And we also have some Maillard browning reactions, which is a result of the complex carbohydrates that's in those onions and the protein. Okay, so you can see we got a little bit of a light brown going on, and that browning doesn't occur until you get temperatures above 300 degrees. So that's why that's so important. I'm adding some mushrooms now. Mushrooms very, very high in moisture, and you definitely don't want to add too much at one time. But we want to allow them to cook in. They add a nice umami kind of flavor, almost meaty flavor. When we say umami, that's what we're talking about, is this deliciousness, this robust flavor and almost meaty type flavor. It's coming from glutamate. So any foods that are naturally high in glutamate are going to give us that kind of meaty type flavor. So tomatoes, for example, very high in glutamate. You might not think about tomatoes, but if you ever had a sun-dried tomato, very, very savory, very, very robust. At this time, any of our more fibrous type herbs like the thyme can be added in at this time in the process. Rosemary would be another example of a fibrous herb. Any delicate herbs always added in at the end of the cooking process because they can wilt down on us, okay? But the more fibrous herbs can withstand a little bit of a longer cook period, so we'll be good to go. All right, so we got a little bit of browning here from that mushrooms. We're now ready to start to add some of our root vegetables into here. So I'm going to start with our potatoes. And for the most part, depending on what you're using in the, so all of those root vegetables can kind of go in with those potatoes. They go to cook very similar. So the Maccumber turnip can be added at this time. It's going to add a nice little sweetness. And we can even add our carrot. And you can see all the colors of this particular dish. And that's one of the reasons why I like it. So, when you're planning out a menu or you're thinking about side dishes, you want to start to think about the colors. Oftentimes, the nutrients that are locked inside our foods correlate with the color of the vegetable themselves. So by consuming vegetables that are a variety of different colors, we're ensuring we're getting a variety of nutrients, and they look better on the plate as well. So kind of a win-win situation for that dish. More nutrient density as well as more color for the final show plate. And I'm going to add the red bell pepper at this time. And once we get all these vegetables in there, because they contain quite a bit of excess moisture, it's not as temperamental, right? So I don't have to necessarily babysit it. I can go back and every now and then move it around, make sure it's not burning or sticking to the bottom. It's okay to get a little bit of browning on the bottom, but we don't want it to burn. So browning, Maillard browning is good. Going to give us some nice flavor. And we're going to want to season this up too with just a little bit of salt and pepper, and that's going to help draw out some of that moisture from those vegetables, as well as season this up, so it'll be less that we have to adjust in the end. So I'm using a little bit of kosher salt. I prefer the kosher salt. I find that it gives a nice balanced salinity to the dish. You don't get that metallic aftertaste that you sometimes get with the iodized salt, and it dissolves much quicker. So we get a true salinity and a little bit of fresh cracked black pepper. Remember, you can always adjust your seasonings at the end as well, but we definitely want to season in layers or season as we go. We're getting some nice browning. And we want to take this to about halfway before we would add any type of meat to this particular dish. And we're constantly scraping the bottom of that pan to just release some of the fond. And we're not adding any type of wine or any type of deglazing liquid to this. We're using the liquid that's naturally coming off of the vegetables themselves to help in that deglaze and pick up some of that fond. And mix it into the hash to really kind of start to build those layers of flavor. So a wooden spoon or spatula like I have here works really, really well for that application. And all I'm doing is moving these around and then just making these little tiny circles in there to kind of scrape off some of that excess fond from the bottom or that excess browning. And you can see it actually looks really, really delicious. And it's coming together very, very well. Very simple dish. Any questions so far?
I have one. Is this something that you could possibly make ahead of time?
You could definitely make this ahead of time. So it does chill really well. You could actually freeze this as well. So the Maccumber Turnip is freezer stable, and so are all the other ingredients that are in this particular dish. So some vegetables are a little bit trickier than others. But this one is definitely going to be freezer stable. So you could make it ahead of time and freeze if you had to, or just put into the fridge. So this is even great. You know, if you have leftovers, you come down in the morning after Thanksgiving, and you can easily turn this into a nice little turkey hash with some eggs over easy. So very, very versatile recipe. And that's what I love. I love, you know, I love Thanksgiving, don't get me wrong. And spending time with friends and family, but it's also great the next day when you get all the leftovers. And this is one way that you can easily incorporate some of those leftovers into that. Great question, though.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
How high is your heat? Because I feel like my stuff is burning so fast already.
So I'm keeping, what do you have? Induction, gas, or electric?
I have gas.
Okay, so the gas is going to be a little tricky. So you're going to want, I'm going to like, for gas, a medium to low heat. So right now mine's reading 5.5 for its power rating, which would be, this goes up to 10. So that would be a very like medium to low flame.
Okay, thank you.
Not a problem. And if you need to slow it down, just pull it off to the side. So remove it from the flame and stir it constantly to slow it down a little bit.
Okay.
Great question. Anytime you're cooking with any starches, they're going to have a tendency to want to stick. So to the bottom, and you're going to run the risk of potentially burning. So you have to keep an eye on it for a little bit and move it around and keep that heat, you know, fairly low. For the most part, I don't really cook on a super, super high heat unless I'm doing like a hard sear. And I really, really want to get that product through that sear very, very quickly. Then I might use a slightly higher heat. But I usually like to keep it, you know, right around that 300-degree mark. So a medium-low heat is what I'm looking at. And I do get lucky because the induction burners are very, 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 very stable. And I can really have quite a bit of control over on the induction burner itself. You could actually melt chocolate right on the, you don't need a double boiler for the induction burner. I'm just about done for the sized vegetables. I'm going to give it a little bit of a taste so I can adjust seasoning. And also check the doneness of some of those potatoes. One more. So good. All these different flavors coming through. And I'm actually right on with seasoning. I don't have to adjust for salt. I guess I just got lucky. But that would be your opportunity. And then there is cheese as an option too for this particular recipe. So you can add cheese at the very, very end and just kind of let it melt over, or you can put it underneath the broiler in your oven to brown up the cheese a little bit, but you got to keep an eye on it. I'm going to finish this up with a little bit of that chopped parsley. And chopped parsley, really super easy. All I did was mince this up really, really fine. And then what I like to do with the chopped parsley is once I'm done mincing it, I put it, just the leaves, not the stems. I put it between paper towel and I squeeze just a little bit just to get off some of that excess chlorophyll. So I get a really nice dry leaf so I don't get like this like green streak all over. You'll get a really nice color, light color in there. So, but you want to add that in towards the very, very end to kind of maintain the color. How you all doing with your recipe? Everybody good? Did you fix that burning?
I don't know what I'm doing. Like my potatoes are taking really long to cook.
How did you, what size did you cut them? Did you cut them like really big or?
Really small, like very small.
Oh, yeah. Okay, the other thing you can do, you know, my potato, I use the new potatoes and sweet potatoes, so it really didn't take me that long to go. But you can blanch them ahead of time, and if they're really super starchy, when you're done cutting them, you can rinse them off to rinse off some of the residual starch, and that might help you out as well. So, but that's why we do these cook-alongs, so we can experience some of these things that might happen, because it's important to note when you're developing a recipe, you know, recipes are really just guides, right? They're guidelines, and they're really trying to create or recreate a dish or an experience that you may have had. So, but the vegetables, fruits, or the ingredients that we're working with are not always the same. They're not always consistent. So there's going to be slight variations that you're going to have to make and be able to pull off of, depending on those ingredients, how they're grown, the stage of ripeness they might be. So that's where cooking from feel and really getting into the whole cooking process and understanding what's happening as your food is cooking really helps. And experience is the only thing that's going to kind of bring that along with you. So it's a lot of trial and error. But that trial and error can be delicious. So, you know, I fully encourage it. It's not something we want to be afraid of, but it is something that we need to take into consideration. I think a lot of people like to try to follow a set recipe and guideline and know that they're going to get a consistent product every single time. And that may not always be the case because our ingredients are always changing. So what I'm doing now is I'm just going to start heating up a little bit of oil and I'm going to get ready to show you my finished plate and how I'm going to finish up this dish. What I did was, so we have my skillets done. I took some of the extra Maccumber turnip that I had just when I was cutting the dices, any of the odd size pieces that I may have had. And I just boiled them in a little bit of salted water. And then I pureed them with some heavy cream. I'm going to mix in a little bit of butter. And that's going to make a sauce for me that I'm going to use for my plate up. But it can also make a really good cream-based soup. You guys can see that this is what it looks like. So this was just pureed. I ended up using a high-speed blender, a Vitamix blender here. But you can use any high-speed blender. Make sure if you're blending things that are hot, your blender is designed to blend hot ingredients. Otherwise, it'll blow up on you, and that's not going to be cool. So the Vitamix, not a problem. So I'm just putting a little bit of butter and I'm kind of whisking that right in. And all this is the Maccumber turnip, some water that was salted, and a little bit of local heavy cream from actually Aruta's Dairy. So one of the older dairy farms still in existence here. And I'm going to keep it on really, really low. But that's my nice puree that I'm going to be using as a sauce. When you're using a puree as a sauce, you run the risk of it weeping on you on the plate. So not going to have a problem with the Maccumber turnip. There's enough starch in there to keep it from weeping, and it's fairly stable. But depending on what you might be using as a vegetable or fruit puree, you might need to adjust that a little bit, and even add in a little bit of either starch or xanthan gum. Even works out very little. So like a pinch of xanthan gum helps to kind of bring everything back together again. Buys you a little bit more time.
Chef, if you were to make a soup out of that turnip, would you consider roasting them first too, or?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they're great roasted, and then put it in as a way of kind of building flavor. That's a great suggestion. So I definitely consider roasting it. I will tell you, a nice good cream Maccumber turnip soup goes really well with crab or lobster as well. So it's a really nice pairing. Might not be something you think about, but it has worked for me in the past. So you would definitely want to maybe consider that. But roasting it is a good way of going. I'm gonna just check on I lowered down my oil a little bit, so it's kind of ready just to kind of heat up some of the veg that I had. I took some of the ends of the Maccumber turnip and I punched them out, so it kind of looks like a little bit of a scallop actually from the screen. But this is actually Maccumber turnip as well. That's just been punched out with a round cutter that I'm going to use to give a little dimension to my plate. But totally up to you. I think it's kind of cool. I did this little experiment one time. So we actually sous vide these, so cook them into a vacuum sealed bag with a little bacon, vodka, and vegetable stock to kind of do a play on bacon wrapped scallop, but it was actually Maccumber turnip, and it was absolutely delicious. So worked out really, really well. So that is kind of my call to fame now. So I had to bring that back for this. And I do have a little bit of Brussels sprout that I'm going to use as a garnish, just some Brussels sprout leaves that I lightly blanched ahead of time that I'll kind of fry up really quick to heat up for the show plate. But again, you can kind of do whatever you want with your plate. Just showing you, giving you some ideas. So this is our braised short rib. Been going for about a good 5 hours. So it should be fall off the bone tender by now. And just in braised in a demi, mixture of demi, so a demi-glace and some beef stock. Brought it about halfway up, seared the short rib on all sides first, and then just placed it into this Dutch oven, 350 degrees. Let it go for about 5 hours. And the way you check this is you want it to really just kind of fall off the bone tender. So we'll take a look. Oh yeah, I see it. So came completely right off the bone there. Absolutely delicious. This could be my dinner. But again, if you had leftover chicken, if you had leftover turkey, you could definitely use that as well. That could work. So number of different applications. I like to take the little back strap off. So if I'm going to serve the bone with it, so that's just my own little thing when I was in restaurants. All righty, I'm going to sear up some of these turnips here. Oops. Shut my pan off. So this will be quick. I'm just heating up. The turnip is actually fully cooked here, so it's been blanched already. So all I'm doing here is just heating it up in a little bit of oil and butter, and I may throw a little bit of salt on there as well. And want to just give it a little bit of color, but not too much. If you don't put enough fat in there, you're going to have, because of the starch, you run the risk of kind of drying it out and making it a little bit tough. So you want plenty of fat, almost like you're poaching in butter and oil. And the goal here is really just to reheat. You don't need that much browning at all. And the fat is actually going to kind of help regulate that for me a little bit. Now I'm going to start with my sauce. Lay some down on the plate here. Knock off some of the excess from the spoon and just pull it through. So I do a little bit of a swipe. I'll show you what that looks like on the camera if you can't see it. Is my phone still on? Oh, maybe you can't. It's a little white washed out, so on that plate, but very, very easy to do. Flip these turnips again. Come back and plate up my hash. I always plate up my meals at home, so I know for Thanksgiving I usually do family style, as I'm sure most do. But I'm a little bit of a nut, so I usually do plate up when I eat here. So helps to control some portion sizes too. We'll place down that. I'm going to fire up some of these leaves here. Because they have a high moisture content, they tend to send oil, so you got to be careful. You really want to kind of keep them submerged down in there. And again, we're just heating those through. Give us a little bit of color. It's that quick. And these have already been blanched, so they're really technically already cooked and ready to go. And then it's just a short rib. Lay that right there. Find which one goes to it. Kind of plate up right on the bone, even though it's not even attached anymore. But it used to be way back when, so I like to kind of put it back there. And then I'm gonna get a little bit of this gravy that I cooked in. Braised items do tend to dry out on you after you take it out of its braising liquid. So adding a little bit back as a final sauce is a great strategy, kind of keeping it really nice. And that is my final plate using all local ingredients. And you guys can see this. Can you see that? All right, so fairly simple. Any questions?
Hey, Mike, it's CJ. How you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Good, brother. Hey, nice job, man. Really, really good.
Nice.
Yeah, man. Thanks again so much for doing this. Hey, how do you recommend cleaning your cast iron?
So yeah, cleaning the cast iron is actually very easy. If the cast iron is not completely soiled and stuck on with a whole bunch of debris, what I typically will do is I'll just go remove all of the food, scrape the food out, and grab a little bit of salt and just a touch of oil and kind of scrape back and forth and remove anything that might be stuck on the bottom. And that might be enough to clean it. If it is kind of heavily soiled, then I may hit it with a little bit of water, but you want to be very, very careful with detergents because that will remove the seasoning of the cast iron. If I use a little bit of water on the cast iron pan to wash it, I always re-season it afterwards because cast iron is porous and it can rust really easily. So what I'll do to re-season this is once you get it completely clean, you dry it out and then you put it back onto your stovetop and you start heating it up with a little bit of fat, a little bit of oil. I usually use canola oil, and you want to bring it just below the smoke point. And that's going to help pulverize that fat right on there, wipe out any excess fat. You just need a light coating and then you're good to go. And that's a good, if you don't, I use my cast iron every single day. So storing the cast iron, I have my cast iron actually hanging up on my wall right in my kitchen. So it never goes underneath, so nothing could potentially drip on it. And the other thing that I do with my cast iron is because I use it so often, I don't have to worry about kind of re-seasoning it. But if you're not using your cast iron that often, that seasoning step that I just brought you through, before you start cooking, you want to do that. And that fat's going to repulverize back onto the bottom of that pan. And it basically helps to create a non-stick surface for you. So really, really super easy to maintain and clean. Just water is your enemy. It's kind of like a gremlin, right? Don't get it wet.
That's great. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. Hey, I might need to jump off in a little bit. It's the baby's bedtime.
Yeah, all right. Hey, say hi to me for me. I mean, so to the little one.
I will. Yeah.
And best wishes.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Nice job.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for coming in. So,
You got it.
and for anybody else on the call too, I did provide you with kind of a turkey help sheet kind of thing with just some basic kind of question and answers that we often hear at the university to kind of help you out with your turkey dinner plans. If you're kind of new to, roasting the turkey or you've had some problems in the past, there's a quick little question and answer guide for you just to kind of give you a head start. I think some of the key takeaways for that is really, the advantage is, invest in an instant read thermometer. The built-in thermometers that are coming with your poultry, they don't go off until 180 degrees. But we don't have to, we cook our turkeys at 165 degrees is the max that you need to go to for poultry. So that's why when you go out to eat, you're like, oh my God, this turkey's really moist and mine's so dry. It's probably because if you're using the built-in timer, it's set for 180 degrees, not 165 degrees. And that's going to make a big difference. There's a couple other things that to look out for, whether your turkey's been, already has some excess moisture added in there from bulking it up with a little bit of water and salt, whether you brine the bird ahead of time as well. what type of oven you're cooking your turkey in. All is going to play a role in really kind of determining how you want to tackle it. So more than happy to answer any questions in that regards as well, if anybody has any.
And everyone, you'll be receiving that turkey tip sheet and the follow-up email that you'll receive on Friday. So you can look out for that. But if you do have turkey questions, feel free to ask them now.
David, bon appetit.
Yes, thank you. Good job.
Thank
Enjoyed
you.
it.
Did you cook along or did you just watch?
Oh, me and my wife cooked along.
Nice. How did it come out?
It came out tremendous. We're already done eating. It was so good.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. So
Thank you so much.
thank you. Anybody have any questions while you still have me? And it can be anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be on this recipe too. If you had something that you wanted to run across me, I mean, my area of expertise is more in the culinary and not necessarily in the baking and pastry world. But you know, I could definitely take a stab at it if you had some of those questions as well. So, you know, feel free to fire away. Worst I can say is I'm not completely sure. We'll find out.
Mia loved it.
Oh, nice. There she is.
Hey, buddy. Say hi, Chef.
Hi. Oh, she's beautiful.
Cute.
Even my dog's getting involved now. She was good through the whole demo.
I know, man. That was your biggest concern.
I know. She's usually pretty good, but she gets jealous when I start talking to myself or other people via a Zoom meeting. So,
All right.
but it's all good.
See you guys.
Great. Does anyone have any other questions? If not, we'll start to wrap up.
I just want to say thank you very much, Chef. Great job. Happy
Oh,
Thanksgiving.
thank you. It was my pleasure.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Chef, for such a wonderful demo and helping us to kick off the holidays. We're so grateful to you for sharing your time with us this evening and appreciate all you've taught us. Also, thank you to all of the alumni in attendance tonight. Your registration for this event included a gift to the College of Food Innovation and Technology, which will go to work immediately to directly support our students and educators. With CFIT, JWU is building upon our reputation as a global leader in culinary education. Your gift will help our students explore the ways food impacts people, communities, and economies and develop practical solutions. And as an alumni donor, you also contribute to the growth of JWU's reputation, which increases the value of your own JWU degree. Thank you all so much for your support. We hope that you enjoyed tonight's program, Cook Along with JWU, and we hope that you will join us for future events. For the listing of upcoming events, please visit the alumni event calendar at alumni.jwu.edu. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Yes, take care. Have a good one. Thank you so much. Happy, healthy holiday. And for any of those veterans out there, thank you for your service, because I know we have Veterans Day coming up tomorrow. So thank you again if anybody's a veteran that was on the call. And be well.